The model of the holographic universe is not an illusion in the sense of a magic trick. There are no hidden mirrors or razor blades up the sleeves of the physicists. There is no sleight of hand. What this model says, however, is that it may well be all an illusion in a fundamental and very real way. We must remember that if we open the box, we cannot be distressed with what we find. We had to know, for any number of reasons. Many religious traditions in the West still take issue with scientific discovery and how it interferes with their worldview. So we listen to the men and women who have devoted their lives to taking that small crack in the box and pry that sucker open wide. So let's go there. We can say the church needed to open the box. At some point during the presentation, many will be sure that what is being presented to you is some kind of a trick of logic or an illusion based on accurate but incomplete data. While it may be true that further study of our existence will reveal further clues to the truth, you may rest assured that the experiments discussed here are openly discussed and available for further research and experiments widely reproduced for over 2 centuries. Few people understand all the math, all the physics, the details of quantum physics. Now we have to trust the brilliance and inspiration of those who simply must know what's in that damn box. Many scientists are so sure of the conclusions that have been reached. A group of German scientists are building a detector to actually measure the artifacts of this holographic universe, similar to how we detect the microwave background, the artifact or heat signature of the Big Bang. It is not our intention to reinvent the wheel. There is a wealth of information on the holographic universe in print, on the web, and in other YouTube productions. Yet, every teacher has his own methods, and those methods may work with some and not with others. Our hope is that our delivery of the information, through our own narrative, and the visual accompaniment,
even after the explanation leaks out, it's a smug mask,
will help allow our subscribers to more easily grasp what might be a very difficult concept to the average person who has no in-depth knowledge of physics or mathematics.
Passed a high voltage across
This
the
is a
electrodes.
discussion of science and science alone. Only proven and repeated observations are allowed here. No New Age assumptions, no implications of hidden or spiritual energies. This is not religion, faith, or belief. This is observation. What we make of these observations is clearly up to our own decision to accept or deny, as though faith or belief comes as an artifact after the fact, after the truth is found, the box opened. There are, however, some implications of these observations that shed an interesting light on what in the past we held as religious or mystical beliefs. You will see what we mean shortly. We live in a malediction of the mundane. When witnessed from an altered state, the awareness of the desperate inanity of reality appears barren to the point of madness. So it is often the want of humankind to find magic and magnificence in existence that is more mirage-induced fear than of truth and real honest perception. So we create all kinds of ways in which we embellish and make exciting a bleak and mundane existence. We are trained in almost every culture to compete, like animals for the kill. It's the very first game we learn to play as young people. We thrive on excitement born from a boredom of a world we already know to be nothing more than it appears. So we invent. We create, as some modern philosophers have called it, a game of hide-and-seek. We hide ourselves by total immersion into the game of life to give it meaning, to force meaning into it, and to live in a world of our own creation. So it then becomes our task in later life to once again separate fact from fiction, so that, if we are wise and we have learned ways to cope, then in our end days we might face the truth with the dignity worthy of a sentient being who, after teasing themselves for a lifetime, in the end must peer into that box of truth. Art and life do have a relationship, and the film The Matrix, an over-referenced piece of work, was no doubt inspired by the discoveries of physics, albeit where the film suggests we are living in a vat of fluid with our minds being fed a false experience, what real discoveries in physics suggests is even more shocking. The main difference between the movie and this thesis is that in the movie the characters are actually in a real world where their bodies are kept asleep and their brains fed specific information, and in this theory there is no real world in which we could ever awake. Our bodies and everything we see is actually inside of the hologram, and there is no outside real world to which we could ever wake up. And that is not to say that there is not another world. If we are correct, then there most certainly is. But it is a world in which we could never exist. Like the characters on the holodeck on Star Trek, who were made up only of projected photons by emitters on the holodeck, the characters were confined to the holodeck.
I feel like a new man.
Professor Moriarty himself.
Where is Captain Picard?
Energy and matter are interchangeable. In the holodeck, energy is converted into matter. Thus you have substance. But only here.
And if I step off this holodeck?
Then, Professor, you will cease to exist.
You are only
a holographic image, I know. Is the definition of life cogito ergo sum? I think, therefore I am.
Yes, that is one possible definition.
It is the most important one. And for me, the only one that matters. You or someone asked your computer to program a nefarious fictional character from 19th century London, and that is how I arrived. But I am no longer that creation. I am no longer that evil character. I have changed. I am alive, and I am aware of my own consciousness. I want my existence. I want it out there, just as you have yours.
That may not be possible.
Then you must murder me, Captain.
I cannot give you what you want.
Because you do not know how to convert holodeck matter into a more permanent form.
Yes, that is so.
I do not want to die.
And I do not want to kill you.
My fate is in your hands. As perhaps it always was.
Moriarty, this vessel's computer has a vast memory capacity.
How well I know.
You will not be extinguished. We will save this program and, hopefully, in time, when we know enough, bring you back in a form which could leave the holodeck.
Or, as they solved the problem in the series, installed more projectors around the ship may be a possibility, but certainly out of our control. And they were never real, solid flesh and blood beings. While we may be flesh and blood, that flesh and blood is nowhere near, not even close, to the solidity that we naturally thought ourselves to be. In the real world, we are data, or information. So far, we have confined our examination of the holographic theory to the physical sciences. From astrophysics to quantum physics, all roads seem to lead us to the same place. However, the neurological sciences also seem to have come to define the holographic universe at a much more personal level. What we are, this group of scientists assert, is a brain which never directly experiences anything real or solid. The cells of the brain never themselves experience light or vision. The eyes do, and they send to the brain a coded set of electrical signals. The brain, from numerous repetitions and comparisons over a lifetime, interprets the signals and reproduces the outside world as digitally described to it by the eyes into a projection which takes place in the brain, creating a three-dimensional representation of the outside world in the back part of the brain where vision is actually created as an experience, much like a camera sends the video signal to be recreated on the television set, and the viewer, which is us, is inside a box from which one can never escape and directly see the outside world. What we see is a three-dimensional representation of it inside of our skulls, a hologram. Now, the same is true of all the other senses as well. We never experience touch. Our skin does, and reports it as signals to the brain. The brain, through a 3D-like projection of the body within the brain cells known as a body map, we have the experience of what our body feels after the fact, as a recreation only. We also hear nothing. No sound is heard by the brain. The ears hear, and reports it as signals to the brain, which makes sense of the signals by reproducing them in a brain-friendly hologram, in this case in the left hemisphere of the brain, and is only then experienced by what we call I. Different disciplines reaching similar conclusions, and in the end perhaps providing common understanding. But psychology and understanding the one who understands is a far deeper mystery yet. So back to the so-called hard sciences of physics. What else have we been able to imagine from the implications of such a state of affairs? As is often the case, there are those who have a tendency to take any ideas to the extreme. The New Age philosophy, which in our opinion only promotes a kind of metaphysical apathy, uses these ideas to suggest that in such a case nothing matters. Good or evil, strong or weak, and all the other essential dualities of life, which we generally consider part of the human ethos, doesn't matter. It's just a simulation. It's not real. Well, anyone who has studied some of the ancient texts, such as the Bhagavad Gita, understands that it doesn't matter that it doesn't matter. It is our duty to participate in life, if for no other reason than the opposite is death. And that would be the end of the simulation or projection. Game over. What it does suggest to us is that just as fuzzy logic in computers could lead to self-aware systems capable of determining its own fate, so can we. Knowledge can set us free. How can knowing we are not in the reality we assumed help us determine our own fate? By seeing our limitations and understanding the physical tools at our disposal. Best known as the holographic universe theory, it has also been referred to as analogous to a kind of cosmic computer simulation. Each subatomic particle a computer bit. Molecules like programming code, and life in all of the universe is that program playing out. You and I may be, in this idea, working out a particular part of the problem which we assume such a simulation would be created to solve. Every atom, molecule, protein, plant, and animal all working out the problem by our very existence and forward movement in time. Every action and reaction furthers the solution to some problem of which we could only guess. So if indeed our findings of the last 200 years are correct, then it begs one very important question. Who or what is running the simulation? Who is projecting the hologram? And if ancient cultures like the Hindi were aware of the vaporous nature of even the most solid of objects, how is that possible? So here then is the light shed onto our perceptions of the mystical. Photons cast into space and held in place by an intricate web of fields and energies. And here we are. Welcome to the real world.
If we are a simulation, then in the ways that matter to us, we are real enough. Whatever force has guided our creation, mathematical or intelligent, it has constructed from simple atoms a creature capable of thinking beyond the limits of physical investigation.
The more Vilenkin considered the process of inflation, the more he wondered about what would make it stop. How would a region of space transition out of inflation? what exactly would happen at the moment inflation ends.
As I thought about it, it turns out that the end of inflation doesn't happen everywhere at once.
Vilenkin suddenly realized that if inflation doesn't end everywhere at once, then there's always some part of space where it's still happening.
So in this picture, the Big Bang is not a unique event that happened. There were multiple bangs that happened before ours, and there will be countless other bangs that will happen in the future.
It was a striking and unexpected new picture in which inflation would stop in some regions but always continue somewhere else. New Big Bangs are always occurring, and new universes are always being born, yielding an eternally expanding multiverse. And more expanding space means more places where the energy can discharge into more Big Bangs and create more new universes. And that means this process could go on forever.
In other words, when it comes to eternal inflation, that cheese is more like Swiss cheese, in which new universes endlessly form, creating a multiverse.
If all the stunning successes of science are correct, and we are living in what must be some kind of computer simulation composed of projected holographic images, complete with the occasional retweaking of existence, as would only otherwise be explained thus far by the main alternative, the multiverse theory.
It's a hypothesis. It's the leading hypothesis because nobody has another hypothesis which makes as much sense.
The multiverse, a tantalizing possibility.
Then several important and stunning conclusions are reached. 1. Existence and everything in it was created. 2. There is a creator who cares about the outcome, as would anyone conducting such an important simulation. 3. It explains why the universe is fine-tuned to allow for the presence of life.
The general view of this, for most physicists, is that these fine-tunings are largely accidental, that the constants of nature are determined by some mathematical principles which have nothing whatever to do with our existence. Impersonal, mathematical, and we were just incredibly lucky that that mathematics happened to give rise to a universe with all this kind of fine-tuning, just precisely so.
And so the anthropic principle existed as an interesting but eccentric theory. But then, quite unexpectedly, a completely new law of nature was discovered, and our universe relied on this law being so precisely tuned that it seemed no rational theory would ever explain it.
Our universe seems to be defined by a set of numbers which in some sense look special. If we had different numbers, we would end up with a sterile universe. People react to this seeming coincidence in a number of ways. You could say it's the outcome of some kind of design or providence. We could say it's a brute fact we have to accept, because these numbers might be determined by some theory which we haven't yet discovered.
For a while it was possible to believe that the laws of nature were not so precisely set as to require the hand of a creator. But then a completely new fundamental property of the universe was discovered. An anti-gravity force present in space itself. It is called the cosmological constant, and when cosmologists calculated its effect on the evolution of the universe, they realized it had to be very finely tuned indeed.
The fine-tunings, how fine-tuned are they? Most of them are 1% sort of things. In other words, if a thing is 1% different, everything is bad. And a physicist could say, maybe those are just luck. On the other hand, this cosmological constant is tuned to 1 part and 10 to the 120 decimal places. Nobody thinks that's accidental.
And finally, 4, it shows that we have a purpose as a kind of subroutine in a larger programming code.
Consciousness is the programming language of the universe.
We are not isolated egos inside of a contained skull, but rather we are a direct and connected part of a process of which could be said that it is equally true, based on over 200 years of experiments, that the universe depends upon our existence as much as we are depending upon it. We are special and have a defined, albeit abstract, purpose in our lives. We are likened here, not exactly but similar to, a vital piece of computer code. Without our little piece of the code, the outcome would be vastly different, more so perhaps over time. We recommend that you sell off your shares in the old religions of the world. Buy into science. It is not only telling us what existence is, but also telling us that it's possible, that at one time in our long ago past we knew this, and over time only maintained certain rough pieces of the truth that science, started by the Church of Rome, has revealed as what really may have happened. We were created. There is a being who looks over us and cares about us. Get thine heads out of thine ancient history and see what your dedicated contemporaries have discovered. It's no less incredible than magical beings, artificially inseminating a young virgin girl, creating a Superman who could perform magical, miraculous feats, or of a creator of all of this who is concerned with what we do.
With people, gray hairs and wrinkles are the telltale sign.
But it is your choice, your free will. Perhaps we are not ready to know, or are not sure we want to know, that we are living in a simulation. It is a challenge to nearly every fundamental aspect of reality that we thought we knew and took for granted.
So new that physicists are still struggling to understand it.
A three-dimensional model of the same pattern that was burned into the rock wall of the Egyptian temple thousands of years ago.
But it seems evident to us that we did once know, and that this knowledge, in the fullness of its details, was lost a long time ago, with only bits and pieces handed down through the centuries in our global mythologies and religions.
Intelligent life will form its own evolutionary path out of this process, relative to its own energy. Because energy, space and time are interlinked by this process, the timeline of the individual life form will be visible as line symmetry within the physical shape of each individual life form.
Religion offers a simple explanation. God created everything, and only God knows why we are here. Science came to a different conclusion. It found no evidence for a grand plan. Yet recent discoveries have made scientists think again. It seems ancient notions may be closer to the truth than science has ever imagined. Perhaps there is, after all, a creator, and creation may not be what we think it is.
On the other hand, this cosmological constant is tuned to 1 part and 10 to the 120, 120 decimal places. Nobody thinks that's accidental.